Portal 2 is one of my favourite games of all time, and it's hard to know where to begin when it comes to talking about it. Portal 1 was praised to the high heavens by the internet, so by the time of the sequel, that good old internet-induced miserable bastardry had set in, and so the general consensus seems to have been that it wasn't as good as the first. But fuck that, it is so much better than the first that the first can fuck off and screw itself. Portal 1 achieved its story with an incredibly minimalist cast. We had the silent Chell, the sardonic GLaDOS, the cutesy creepy turrets, and the present only in what they left behind Ratman. Portal 2 sees a return of all these characters with the addition of the adorable Wheatley and the eccentric Cave Johnson. Stephen Merchant in particular pulls an incredible performance as Wheatley, and quick anecdote time, when he got the job he assumed it was going to be an easy gig because he hadn't played a computer game in about 20 years, turned out to be the hardest job he'd ever done, and initially he said he'd never do it again, but reconsidered when he saw how well everyone responded to it. The Glory Hound. And let's face it, playing a villain who is both lovable, silly, and chilling and heartbreaking is an impressive feat. At least I think it's heartbreaking. Go listen to the post-Second Corps ranting again when he's upset that Chell never caught him. He sounds like he's crying and it's horrible. So Portal 2 takes place 200 years in the future, maybe. Valve have a sort of make-nothing explicit policy when it comes to Portal, so actually it could be anywhere from 20 years to 50 to the power of 47 years, though I don't think that one is quite as likely. So, based on the clues scattered across the game, it could be either of these time frames. In all honesty, 20 is the most likely, because that would just so happen to line it up to the exact time frame of Half-Life 2 / Half-Life 3, which would lead to crossover brilliance in the future, but if that doesn't come to pass, I mean, that would be awesome, but if that doesn't come to pass, I like to think it takes place 200 years, because that's a period of time that's totally life-altering as far as Chell is concerned, but it's not a ridiculous number either, so, that's nice. Anyway, as for Chell, we're crumb-fed a few more details as to what she might be, I mean who she might be. For starters, we know she was present for Aperture Science's Take Your Daughter to Work Day when she was around 11. I didn't get a good look at it, but the booth with the giant potato definitely has Chell's name on it. This is confirmed. We know that a lot of people / children were gassed to death on Take Your Daughter to Work Day for whatever reason, but she survived. Chell isn't 11 in Portal 1, obviously. In fact, she has greying hair in Portal 1, which is magically gone 200 years later. So, what was she up to in the 10-20 years in the meantime? Was Chell adopted at birth, or was she orphaned by the events of Take Your Daughter to Work Day and adopted by another Aperture Scientists? Perhaps she lived in the facility after that day. However, we also know from supplementary material, i.e. the Ratman comic, that Chell is a test subject, deemed untestable due to her pathological determination. So maybe it's a bit crueler, and when her parents, birth or foster, died during Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, Aperture simply kept her on retainer as a subject, which certainly makes all their deaths seem a lot less tragic. It's possible that since the age of 11, Chell has never had anything remotely like a normal life. See, it's impressive the sorts of places your mind can go just by seeing Chell's name on a potato battery project, and I think the breadcrumb hints nature of the story is what draws me into Portal so much. There's just something about that method of storytelling that really engages me, more so than if there was a clear-cut backstory for everything. Also, it could be seen as a meta extension of the player character is you that Valve are going for. Both Chell and Gordon Freeman are voiceless because they want the player to project onto them, but with Gordon Freeman you are at the very least a theoretical physicist. With Chell, your story really is your own. You can make up whatever she may have been before the events of Portal 1, and that's neat, that's nice. Now I really need to focus myself for this review, or it'll take forever. At its heart, Portal 2 gets to me because it ticks all of the emotional boxes. It is funny, it is awesome, at times it is creepy or scary, and sometimes it is heartbreaking and tear-jerking. Yes, parts of this game do in fact drive me to tears. Wheatley's ultimate fate, his pathetic desperate ranting when he's near defeat, how forlorn he sounds when he's in space. GLaDOS's realization that she loves or at least deeply cares for Chell, and the aria that she sings for her as Chell ascends, which when directly translated into English is essentially a mother saying goodbye to her child and wishing the best for her. These all make me rather damp-eyed, so it was lucky that I got to be quiet while those were going on in the game itself. So, Those two events are the chief my eyes actually leak moments, as I just said, but beyond that we have the tragic arc of Cave Johnson, a young, determined, idealistic but clearly insane man, slowly falling on harder and harder times until he's old, dying, in pain, full of bitterness and hatred at life and himself. Yeah, the Lemons rant is funny and awesome, but consider what his emotional state must have been when he said all that. And while it probably doesn't count as in-game because it was cut for the final release, there's the fact that Carolyn really, really did not want to be uploaded into GLaDOS. The rumours are that it was cut because the entire scene came off like a rape, that Ellen McLean was in tears while recording Carolyn's lines, and that J.K. Simmons refused to record Cave Johnson's lines. These rumours have been declared false by Eric Wolfpaw, so we don't know why it was cut, but whatever the truth is, it definitely adds a much darker edge to Carolyn's story, and sheds some light on why GLaDOS is quite as unstable as she is. Portal 2's weird and fantastic world has 1,000 little details going for it, some for comic effect, some for blood-curdling horror effect, and I could list them for hours and hours and hours. Suffice it to say I missed out on a lot of little touches when playing through the game. You can even find the half-destroyed dock where the Borealis once was in Old Aperture, perhaps Valve's way of letting you know that they haven't completely forgotten about Half-Life. But while the details are great, it's the raw humanity of Portal 2's story that makes it shine for me. Portal 1 had none of it. It was just you and a murderous robot, but in Portal 2, for me anyway, it's just a very human experience, all about love and hatred in its many manifestations. GLaDOS is the result of love gone wrong. Cave Johnson's love and admiration for Carolyn led to him inadvertently putting her through a fate worse than death. GLaDOS's reuniting with her humanity and coming to love Chell is what ultimately saves Chell's life, even though it leaves GLaDOS a miserable wreck. And the co-op, which I haven't played very much because I don't have any friends, really shines a light on how alone and unhappy GLaDOS is without Chell. Wheatley's tearful, paranoid rantings during his fight are a lot like those of a jilted lover, wondering why he's been abandoned in favour of another. The aria to Chell, a song all about love and reverence, is subtly played throughout the entire game. No other time quite so blatant as during the companion cube room. Ratman, while he didn't necessarily love Chell, cared for her enough to sacrifice his own life to save hers, though again, that's more comic than game. In short, Portal 2 succeeds because it honestly makes you care about everyone, from the disembodied voice of an insane arsehole, to an eccentric little ball, to a potato with a couple of wires sticking out of it. It's just a magical experience for me, and if it weren't for the addition of highly problematic material, it would be perfect. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back with Fallout 3 later.